All right, we are live.
We did it.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. In case you are wondering who I am, my name is Antonio Bryce. I am the creator of the comic book series brand. We have raised nearly $75,000 thanks to the kindness of good folks such as yourself. I am very excited for this stream. It is another one of our interviews in the Creators series. And I've been wanting to speak to this gentleman for quite a while now. He is a 30-plus year veteran of the comic book industry. Titles like X Factor, X-Men, Uncanny Spider-Man, or Ultimate Spider-Man, and Ultimate X-Men, and Adventures of Superman. And he's got, it's like, two-time Wizard favorite inker. And man, this is, he's got a book on Indiegogo right now. It is called Chrono Mechanics. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Art Thibert.
Hey, everyone. Hello. And thank you so much, Antonio, for having me on your show. This show, you've had some major talent on, and I always like listening to your interviews. So thanks for having me on.
Well, I think this is going to be another one, man. I'm very much, it's strange that I'm talking to you now because, like, I can go back 30 years and I remember seeing an AT on a lot of covers when I was in. Although at that time I thought it was Art Thibert. I was like, whoever this Art Thibert is, I like, it was like Cable and different things I'd see your little AT on. And man, I've got a lot. Like, I go through my long box. There's a lot of stuff that you inked in there. And I was like, well, let's go back in the time machine. Let's hit the TARDIS and go all the way back.
Back.
So tell us about Little Art and how you got started in the comic book business.
I originally was studying and working as an illustrator. So comics weren't really anything that I was pursuing, to be honest. And so I never could really afford any formal training, like a 4-year college or that type of thing. So I was out on my own pretty early on. So I would take night courses, at the local JC and things like that. And I would work on my illustrative craft and stuff like that. And one of the teachers looked at my work and said, your stuff looks kind of cartoonish, like comic book art. I go, well, I love comic books. He goes, well, it shows even in your realism, when you're trying to do realistic stuff. And he said, I have a friend that does comic books, and he was working for Neil Adams Continuity Comics. He was doing that Megalith book. His name was Brian Murray, and Brian Murray was one of the key players at Extreme Studios in the early days. He did a lot of color work on Supreme, and I think he did the pencil work on Supreme as well, the first couple of issues. And so the teacher got me in touch with Brian. And so Brian knew Jim Valentino. And, as a young creator, artist just trying to pay the rent, you go with where the money is. And so illustration was pretty hard because, I'd have to drive to LA. I'd have to meet with art directors. You have to bring your portfolio. You have to meet with people. There's a lot of back and forth before you even get a job. And so Jim Valentino needed an assistant. What became, it started off as an assistant, but then became full-on inker. So I started inking and assisting him on Normal Man. And then he started working on Myth Adventures. So then I went over to Myth Adventures. And at that point, I was full-on, credited as an inker and everything like that. So that's kind of how the comic book thing happened, at the very beginning of it. Yeah.
And I was like, I remember, I think I started, now I might be wrong about this, but I could have swore I saw, this was way, and I was like, I could have swore I started seeing that AT like on, what was it, Adventures of Superman, I think? So was that, that was Dan Jurgens, wasn't it? At that time?
I was doing finishes over Dan's breakdowns.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's what I was like. And how long did you do that?
I did it for about 2.5, maybe 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. So that was the big breakthrough book right there. So I started off. I got work at Marvel and DC on the same day. So I went to New York City, brought my portfolio, and I met with some of the Marvel people. And then, long story, I ended up getting work there as an inker, and then I got work as a penciler at DC Comics. So I started working, doing the Who's Who for Star Trek. I think that was my first pencil ink work. Yeah, so I contributed to that. And then it didn't take long that they gave me the Warlord book, the DC character, the Mike Grill character, I should say. So I was penciling that with Pablo Marco inking me. So I did that for a while I was inking at Marvel.
So the inker had an inker?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't know at the time, like now everything's very specialized, but I didn't know what I was going to do. So I always penciled and inked my own work because I just thought that's how it was done. So all my samples and everything, they weren't just pencils, they were pencils and inks.
Interesting. Because were you ever working at both Marvel and DC? I guess you were freelancing. Were you ever doing that simultaneously or no?
Yeah, I got work the same day. So I was working at Marvel and DC. I got hired at Marvel to do inks and DC to do pencils. So I think I stayed in New York because at that time, this is probably early 80s, like 83, 84, maybe. I'm old. And so you could bounce back and forth. I think since then it's a little frowned upon, but at that point it wasn't a big deal to jump between Marvel and DC.
Well, one thing, this is probably going to sound crazy, but when I used to see that AT, I used to think, I don't know why, I always got like a manga sense or something from from what is that? Your signature, your letterhead, whatever that was that you would. I always thought. So, like I said, I thought your name was Art Thibert, and I don't know why I thought you were Asian. I don't know why, but the AT always looked. It always made me look like it looked like Japanese lettering or something.
Well, I think it's kind of like with the bamboo, where they draw. So it is kind of inspired by that, where they're just like these slashes. Yeah, so it's just kind of these movements. And also, you might think of that because early on, too, I was working with Jim Lee and Will Spertasio. So there was a lot of that connection there as well. So
yeah, that was actually one of the first things that I had been seeing that AT on comics, but I remember getting because Will Spertasio was the artist on it. It was the first edition of the first appearance of Bishop. And I think it was, they had Uncanny X-Men, they had X-Men, and Bishop was, and I think didn't John Byrne write that issue? I think.
Yeah, they worked with John quite a bit in the early X-Men stuff.
Because I was like, yeah, I saw that. I was like, I saw that, and the big it was like Bishop at the top, and then the other two guys. So came through. I guess they were coming through a portal or whatever. And
there's a portal behind them.
Yeah, man. I was like, so how did y'all? Because I know a lot of times you can now you can email the high res of the pencils to the person, and they can do it. But how did you ink back then? Did Wills have to send you the actual art, or did he just fax it, or what used to happen?
Well, in the early days, we did pages or increments of 8. And so we had to drive to the post office, use their boxing. We had to put the brown paper on it and everything, get it weighed, and then pay for it. And then they would send it that way. And I think they were 8-page increments. So if my math is correct, remembering it's like 3 sets of 8, is that 22 pages? It's something like that. So then DC or Marvel would reimburse you for the shipping. Either that or you would just write it off on your taxes. So we actually had to physically get in a car and drive down the post office in the early 80s. And then when Federal Express came, it made it a little bit easier. So you could either call Federal Express, which DC and Marvel didn't like because there was an extra charge, or like there were a lot of drop-off boxes that you could find, and then you can drop stuff off that way. So when I was working with Jim and Wills, Federal Express was around at that point. So most of the pages came through Federal Express, but they're in San Diego, so they're south. And I lived in like the LA beaches, Hermosa Beach. So it's a little bit of a haul. It's maybe like 2.5 hour drive. But when it was crunch time, Jim didn't come down a lot, but Wills did. So Wills would drive all the way up. I shouldn't say down. He'd drive up. And so sometimes we would just work back to back at Hack Shack Studios. I had a little studio there, and we would just jam on the pages as a crunch time to get those books done. Yeah. All
right. So let me. Man, the questions are coming in. So okay. So here's Google too. Art, do you like any other inkers there who are alive and working?
I hate them all. Just disgusting. I hate. No, there's some really brilliant guys. But I'll tell you, I was always there. There are some standout inkers for me when I was, in the early years. But I really like pencilers that ink themselves. Like I like Kanan's line, man. I know you guys were like, hey, Art, can you do some, hook him up or whatever. But to be honest, I mean, it's a little intimidating because his line, I know it's digital a lot of times, but it's really good. And you can't really tell it's digital. And that's skill. That is a lot of skill.
That's as someone who owns a few of Kanan's original pencils, he can make no mistake. He can definitely lay some pencil down. It's just that when I ask him to do it, he cries like a baby, and then I have to make him do it. So it's like
it is a lot of work, and it's a different discipline. But early on, I liked Carl Kiesel. I liked was it Dick Giordano was one of my favorites, and then even Terry Austin. So those were some of the standouts. But I liked Dick Giordano, but I liked the way Neil Adams inked himself too. You know what I mean? So I liked Kevin Nolan, the way he inks other people and the way he inks himself. So even Mike Mignola in the early days, now it's a little bit more cut and dry. There's a little less soul in it. But when he inked his own work early on, I thought it was pretty awesome. Yeah, so I like a lot of pencilers that ink their own work.
All right. And so you were on, I don't know how many, because it seems like even when you weren't doing like inking interiors, I always seen your name on a lot of covers. I don't know if they were giving you a bunch of covers to do or whatever, but I always kept seeing that AT on covers. It's like, although I think sometimes I was confusing you with Art Adams. When I was younger, I did not know you were separate people. I was like, no, that's Art Adams. That's not Art Thibert. It's not the same person. But I know I was seeing you on like X Factor and X-Men. I mean, you own both. It looked like you own both titles, at least. Which one? It was the regular X-Men, not Uncanny, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah. Well, at some point, I was inking Art Adams on either X-Men, because I did a lot of the annual stuff, the X-Men annuals with Art, or Arthur, because that's how we would distinguish between the two. And then he did that fantastic run, the 3 issues with Walter Simonson. And so I would do that. And then I was doing finishes on Adventures of Superman. And I was inking Jim Lee on the Uncanny X-Men book all at the same time. So I did that for maybe 6 months or so. So I was bouncing back and forth between 3 books a month, and that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
how did I do that, man?
No, I would go in the shop and I would just see that AT everywhere, and I was just like, I said, I guess he's like the guy or something. I don't know. He just kept popping up, and which, hey, I'm not complaining. You did very clean work. That was definitely something I was impressed with. Somehow, how did you? Because obviously you sound like you had a relationship with Wilson, you had a relationship with Jim Lee, 2 of the 7 Image founders. So how soon after Image was founded did you hop on over?
Well, to back up, I got my start with Jim Valentino, And so
Oh, three of them.
Rob Liefeld, I later,
Four.
well, at that time I lived in Huntington Beach, which is close by. All those guys are Orange County guys. So there was Brian, Jim, Valentino, and then there was Rob Liefeld, and then there was myself. So we hung out all the time. So I met Rob through that group of people, and Rob was just a kid. I think he was still in high school. So he was living at his folks' house. So I think he liked hanging out at my apartment in Huntington Beach because it gave him a little freedom. You know how it's, when you're young and you just kind of like, I want to get out of the house. So we hung out quite a bit. And so I broke in professionally, and I was working on the Warlord, and he was just, I think he was actually doing stuff for that Youngblood book because that predates Image. So he was developing Youngblood even at the time. So I remember him working on that while I was working on Warlord and inking the Marvel stuff. And so I got the job at DC first, and I believe a month later or 2 months later, he got a job to pencil Warlord as well. But they had bonus books. DC would try out new talent with these bonus books. And so Rob was still a little rough, so they went in, and because he did show potential, they gave him one of the bonus books. So there's actually a Warlord that I penciled and that Rob's bonus book is featured in, because they were like a little 8-page insert in the comic book. So and then the Rob Liefeld connection, the Kiesels, because Barbara Randall, before she was Barbara Kiesel, was one of my editors, because I also penciled and inked a lot of Teen Titans Spotlights.
I know they did Superboy together or something like that. I thought they were. Yeah. I remember seeing on Superboy, when they had to clone Superboy or whatever.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on. This is still the 80s, though. And so she offered me Hawk and Dove. And so I had moved on to Time Masters, which they based that TV show on the Time Masters series I did. And so I got a royalty check, and I get royalty checks for that. So that's very cool. And because there's some characters and stuff that I created, and the name Time Masters came from that book. It didn't exist prior. And so I remember I was busy penciling that, and it was an 8-issue series, and it was kind of like Watchmen-esque. So it was like this big, deep, all the DC characters and the lore and all that stuff. So it was quite a job, for a guy that's just kind of breaking in. So I remember I passed on the Hawk and Dove, but I said my buddy Rob Liefeld would love to do it. So Rob sent stuff in. The Kiesels liked his work, and the rest is history, because Rob's career took off right after that, man.
Oh, God, yeah. That's a lot of people, you see how things are kind of with Rob now. And I remember I was doing a stream with Elliot Fernandez a few months ago, and I said a lot of people forgot, Rob was actually the guy. It was him. It was him and Todd McFarlane. Jim Lee, I would have said, was third. It was like, I was like, it was Todd and Rob, because they were, Todd was on Spider-Man, Rob was on New Mutants, and everybody forgets how popular Rob Liefeld was. He had that Levi's button fly commercial, and Spike Lee direct all that. I mean, my God, he was doing everything. And you had mentioned the Youngblood thing. He had an article. There was an article that ran in one of the magazines. He changed the name. I guess it predated Youngblood. I think he called them extremists or something like that. He called them or executioners or something. He had an X in the name. He changed it. It was pretty much some of the same characters from Youngblood, but but he called them like extremists or executioners or something. He made sure he put the X in the name, and then I guess he was concerned that perhaps a lawsuit might be any change.
The thing is, like, those guys wanted to be just, I think, because it was their last little turn of the screw, right? So a lot of the titles coincide with the titles they were doing for Marvel. So Spawn is in the S's. So it's right next to the Spider-Man books when they go up on the shelves. So Todd, Spawn, Spider-Man, boom. Youngblood, X-Men, and like you said, he did have an X in the title. So it would be right there with the X books. So Wildcats is still kind of in that, that area on the the bookshelves there.
Oh man,
So
I remember
I think
Wildcats.
yeah, there was a lot of like little turn of the screw with those guys, because I think they wanted fans to go into the bookstores and go, wait a minute, he was over here, but now he's here. They wanted to make that comparison.
Let me see. I forgot the $2 super chat from Andrew Huerta. He says, Art trying to get backers with that chest hair. All right. Well, get it, man. But how soon? Okay, so you done slid over the Image and you're working with those guys. Oh no, you're covering up the sexy. But I actually have some old
Oh
here's
my God.
Black and White number 2 and 3. I had somebody send me these a few months ago, and I don't have issue 1 yet. But
let me see. I got. I was showing these off the other day. Let's see if I can find them. Yeah, I have the ash can. Oh, here it is. And this is the cover, a remastered version of the cover of issue 1, the one that you don't have.
okay,
so this is in the Black and White campaign. It's the 16-page ash can.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm assuming you may have probably sold it. I'm about to ask, do you still have the original cover art or no?
Oh no, I don't. Yeah. I sold all the covers. I do have some interiors left though.
Oh wow. From back then, because that's the thing, because like even now I've seen a lot of inkers that I follow online. They some of them ink digitally that I follow, and it's like, I guess there's, and I was like, but I guess you can't sell it if you ink it digitally. Because I was like, that's the whole point. You're supposed to, you go into cons and everything, and you need to, hey, I've got original art for sale. So
it helps. Yeah, it helps to have the originals. Yeah.
So I was like, man, it's like I said, these are pretty good copies that like I said, someone sent me these that watches the channel, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, because I was wanting to talk to you anyway, and I was like, this is cool to have these. And there's that AT on there, which is really cool. But like I said, I see the AT, and I honestly did. I thought you were like doing you see what Danny Miki, I see his signature on stuff, and he actually would use like Asian Asian symbols and stuff like that, and it was kind of cool to watch that. So okay, so now you've been Marvel, DC, and Image. Okay, so where do you go from there? Do you go back, or do you just go back to, because I mean, you were at Image for a good while. It looked like you did a lot of cover work and doing all, interiors on some books. And then you started putting out, obviously, your own stuff. I know you did Black and White, and you did this, like Chrono Mechanics that you have out now. That was also something you had put out through Image, right?
Originally, yeah. But just to back up, the books I was originally supposed to work on at Image, because man, I'll tell you, the 90s were so amazing. They were so good to me that I had for the first year, my schedule was going to be, I was going to ink Cyberforce over Mark Silvestri.
Wow.
And I was going to ink Whilce Portacio and Wetworks. So those were the 2 books that I was supposed to do for that first year, because I didn't go to Extreme right away. So, I mean, it was probably within a few months. But the thing is, I still don't know to this day what happened between Mark and I, because we both lived in the South Bay. So we hung out quite a bit socially, his girlfriend, me and my girlfriend, and things like that. So something fell apart. I think what it was is Wizard was doing articles about me coming on to cable, the penciling cable. And so I think he thought it was in lieu of that. Like I was shunning him to do this other book, and it wasn't the case at all. And the way things all worked out, I could have done both anyway, because Mark only put out 1 book that whole year, and there was only 1 Cyberforce book that came out for that year. And then
a couple of those Image guys had that problem.
Whilce didn't even put out his book the first year.
He was dealing with family problems, right? I saw that Image. There was an Image documentary, and it was something, I guess, his family's from the Philippines or whatever. And
his sister, and they're really close. Yeah, Filipino families are really, really close.
Well, that's because I always look, like I said, the 7 Image founders, Wills. I thought Wills and Jim didn't really blow up for other reasons. I guess I don't know. I was never a big Jim Valentino fan as far as, but there were a couple of his books that I bought. Like Todd always seemed to be cool with him, and he inked them on inked a couple of Guardians of the Galaxy covers or something, and which some of my favorite stuff that Todd McFarlane inked is actually Rob Liefeld too, because he like the first appearance of Cable, that famous cover with Cable with the gun, and if I'm not mistaken, that was Louise Simonson was the writer on that particular issue. And you got I always thought that whatever kind of faults that Rob had as artist, as far as like anatomy, Todd could go in there and clean those up and then put like beautiful detail hash and lines in there. So I was like that cover with the Cable cover. He also inked him. I know the previous cover, which was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Vulture. And I think that character, the redheaded character, I think his name was Rusty or something like that from the New Mutants. It was because he only worked with Louise on a few more issues. And then there was a fill-in issue. And then I know Fabian Nacienza was coming in or whatever. So
yeah,
it was they were getting ready to change the name of everything, and change it over to X-Force. And I was just, but yeah, man, I loved it. That the 90s, that was perfect. I got my first comic when I was like 7. And then, went through the 90s, back when you could actually still go to the grocery store and see stuff on the spinning racks and everything. Man, I miss those days. And I mean, that's, I think when people are talking about the industry dying, the fact that you can't go and buy those books a lot of times at grocery stores, I think that changed. I mean, yeah, comic book shops are one thing, but I think being able to actually go into like just a regular grocery store and just see, hey, there's Spider-Man, just grab one, I think, maybe it's probably not practical, but it would be nice if you could actually still go to if you go to Wally World and figure, although I know DC's doing those big 100-page $5 things now or whatever, but it's just a little different.
I remember going we went to Florida, the Disney parks there, and they had like little book kiosks and stuff like that. And they had comic books there too. Like you could buy comic books in the 90s at these parks. And yeah, they were pretty readily available. We need to find somebody that's got some capital. We get a Comicsgate spinner rack. Yeah. Put all our books on the spinner rack and it'll just be all Comicsgate, books. That would be awesome.
Well, that's the thing, because when we see Zach talking about the comic book shops closing, and those, and don't get me wrong, I love my comic shop because you can actually still smoke in buildings back there. I remember the guy that was always behind the counter when I go to my it was a place called Collector's World when I was like 13, 14 years old. And I'd walk in there and they were in there like smoking cigarettes and stuff. And you could just do that. It was just, but I was a kid, and there'd be like some 25, 30-year-old guy. What do you want, kid? Hey,
he's in a tinderbox, right? These are all like old, like back issues of dried out newsprint,
yeah, man.
They're just waiting to happen.
And that's when I didn't understand how comics were made. And that was when I was always fascinated by original art. I did not know that you could actually buy the art that was in the comics. I didn't understand how it was made. And when I was like 13, 14 years old, he had there was a guy named Freddie Garcia, actually. And he had some of, he was one of the managers there, and he had a pile behind the counter of original comic book art that they had, and you could, like pages and stuff, it was always obscure, like Mr. Miracle, number 180 or something, it'd be something like that. And he, he actually had some original pages from Mr. Miracle, and he pulled them out and let me see. And you would see how they they would like glue the font on and stuff like that. And I was like, oh wow. I just
wait. I have keep talking.
Okay. Here we go. All right.
Keep
this
talking.
is what I want. Yeah. All right. See, I'm geeking out now. I'm having a geek out moment because I love.
Let's go old school here.
Yeah, man. Oh, here we go. All right.
This. Let me try to get in front of the mic here.
Okay, hold on. Let me put you.
I'm gonna move the mic and so I can move this back.
Yeah, let me put you on. So we can soak it up. Oh yeah. Oh.
So this is one of the few Adventures of Superman pages that I kept, and also there's a documentary called Up in the Sky that they did when what was it, Superman Returns or whatever that Brandon Routh movie was.
Oh yeah, that was bad.
There's a big documentary, and so I'm in it, and so is this piece of artwork. And
okay. So now I need to look it up. Okay, so you're in it. That'll be cool, man.
Yeah, I talk about the death of Superman and the wedding. So this was featured in the movie. So this is Lois showing Jimmy Olsen her ring and basically letting him know that, they're going to tie the knot. You can see the caption there.
So this is before the wedding episode or whatever.
Yeah, this is just before that. Yeah. And so the lovely lady, let me see, this camera's weird. Over here, was my girlfriend at the time that became my wife. So that's Pamela.
Oh, so you drew your wife into the...
Yeah, and there's me right above Superman, like before the gray hair.
Oh man!
And then I drew Elvis Presley and Priscilla because it was the time when it was like Elvis sightings. So I used to put Elvis Presley in the background all the time.
Now it's Tupac sightings. That's funny. Because it was funny when I talked to Ann Nesenti. She, we started talking about Typhoid Mary. That she had. That was part of her Daredevil run when her and John Romita Jr. were working together. And I was wondering how they came up with Typhoid Mary. And she was like, I actually think John based Typhoid on one of his girlfriends at the time. He was like, yeah, with the big hair and the whole thing. So I was like, that was interesting. So I thought, I just thought that was interesting. So I was like, oh, okay. So that's what you guys do, man. You take your family members or whatever and just draw them in. And also Steve Englehart drew himself into what was it? Him. It was like Steve Englehart, Len Wein, and I can't remember the other, was it Roy Thomas? I think they were all, was it Len Wein was on one book and someone was over at DC and Steve was on, I think he was still on Strange Adventures or whatever doing. And they did like a 3-part thing where it was supposed to be these 3 guys and they were going to a party. But they would show a little panel in one book and then the next book and then the next book. And you wouldn't know. But even though one was at DC, you wouldn't know like that. And it was just kind of cool. He told that story on my stream. And I thought it was cool.
Well,
so,
you put Edwin Boyette in Brand, right?
I did. It was, well, and I've had people ask me why. The reason I put Edwin in Brand was because when someone finally noticed Brand and Mike S. Miller invited me, he showed Brand on Ethan Van Sciver's channel, and he immediately contacted me. He was like, "Hey, do you want to come on my channel and sell some books?" Because my book was dying. Do you understand? Nobody was buying it. It's surreal to look back a year later. And when we got off the air, Mike was like, "All right, guys, got to go." He left, but the stream, how a lot of times, when I had Kelsey on last night, that was one of the things we talked about. A lot of times we would get off the air and we'd still be talking like an hour, 2 hours later, even though we were off the air. And Mike said, "All right, guys, got to go," and he left, and it was just me and Edwin Boyette. And I talked to Edwin for almost 2 hours at that point. And he was, he said, "Tell me about your story." He said, "Really, he said, be long-winded, be detailed about it." And I just really started going from beginning, middle, and end and telling him, different story arcs and stuff I had. And he said, "Okay, he said, this character Dawn, he said, you need to beef her up. You need to do this. He was giving me all this different advice on what I should do. Because at one point I was trying to do a 100-page story from the first issue, and nobody knew what the hell Brand was and everything. He gave me a lot of good advice that I ended up using. And so I already had the character of Edward Lind in mind. That character is going to pop back up in later issues and stuff. I just didn't have a face for him. And, because he gave me such good advice, I told him, I said, you know what? I want you to be this character. And he thought it was just going to, I told him, I said, no, this is a character that I'm planning on using. He's going to be an important character. So yeah, he just shows up for a few panels in this first issue, but he'll be back. But that's why I chose Mr. Boyette for Brand, but that's one thing about Brand. It has so many real people in it now. We had the get drawn into the book tier. And then I used a lot of friends of mine. There's a dear friend of mine by the name of Aaron Ferguson that I met. He was one of my early shift managers when I worked for Amazon.com. And he was someone that really helped me. I was about to get fired and stuff, and he helped me. We were working on a rate, and he would really come over and work with me and help me get faster and everything. And it was just it was really interesting that he just took an interest in me. And he was like, he said, I see that you want it. You just need a little help to get your speed up and everything. And he really took a lot of time with me and stuff. He's still a dear friend of mine to this day. And my mother passed, and he drove like halfway across the state to come to my mom's funeral and everything. And so he is playing Malcolm Waddell in Brand. He's Chef Malcolm Waddell, who is going to be Dawn's uncle. So he's playing, so I showed him that, and he was like sending it to his mom and his dad. And he's like, look, they got me in this comic book. And he was so touched by that. So yeah. And Kanan did a great job of capturing his likeness and everything. So it was really, so yeah, I definitely understand. Obviously the character David Craven has my face, at least in his, in his fat guy form. It's all me. and then when he becomes the alpha, it kind of, he kind of looks like me with like liposuction, I guess. So
what do you snap pictures of your friend and then email those off to Kanan?
Yeah. I was like took a lot of stuff off his Facebook and stuff. He had little pictures on his Facebook, and but I told him he hadn't seen it yet, but I did tell him, I said, look, we're gonna put you in the comic book. He thought I was just gonna put him in like a quick little camp, and I told him, I said, no, this character is connected to one of the main characters. You're gonna be in. I said, you'll probably be in several comics, and he was just like, oh man. And then so he was really interested, and like say his whole family's interested in the book now, because they was like our brother, my son's in the book, so
he's a celebrity now.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I did not realize. And then, whenever Kanan was doing the backer cameos and stuff, I would send those when he'd get them completed. I would send, I was like, hey, here's a preview of your cameo in the book. And there were so many of them. They were really choked up. This guy paid to have his 2 kids drawn into the book, and he saw his kids, and he was really excited. He was just like, this is great, man. You don't know. One thing I've learned over the last year, it's like this stuff means stuff to people. You know what I'm saying? It's like the comic book industry, that's what's been missing a lot. That's why, it's like when I hear people, well, you're in your 40s, why do you care about comics? And I was like, man, when I'm showing people, someone that had been a dear friend had passed, and they wanted to like recognize that person and have them drawn into the book and stuff like that. And I was like, oh wow, that really it surprised me, some of the people that wanted to be drawn into Brand. So but this has been an experience. I've really enjoyed, which I'm glad that we're still getting pages colored up, but I'm glad that it's nearing the finish line. I'm really excited to send the book out and let everybody.
Yeah, as excited as you are right now, and the people wait till they get that book. My gosh, you know what I mean? That's when it's going to go nuts. Like, I can't wait for the filling with Black and White as well. I mean, Ethan's going through it right now, and you see his streams, and he's like a giddy schoolgirl when he gets.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, people like the book. I mean, I was on his show the other night, and I was just talking about how much I enjoyed it, and he genuinely seemed shocked, that I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, wow, man, this is what it's all about. Because what people don't understand is we spend months and months and months working on these books, and we don't know what people are going to think. We don't know how people are going to feel about those. So when you get these back, it touches your soul, like to the point where you almost feel like you're going to break down, because you're so emotional about it. So these are labors of love. These aren't casual pursuits,
Yeah, that's the thing. I've been, Brand's been part of my life for 21 years now, I think. And I just kept starting on it and never, it's like I start on it, I'd be unemployed. I'd be like, okay, well, while I'm looking for a job, let me go back to writing the book or whatever, And I just finally when I lost my mother in 2016, I was like, you know what, if I don't do anything else, I'm gonna finish this book. And that was one of the things, like when we got off the air, Kelsey and I last night, I actually showed him a couple of the, final pages because he hadn't seen. And I was like, this is the last page of the book. This is that. And he was just like, oh man, that's so cool, man. I don't know. I dig Kelsey. He's my spirit brother or something, he just has that nice, cool, chill vibe, man. I'd like to stream with him more, but this whole community just bonding over comic books and stuff. I don't know. Comics is a passion.
What people don't understand is like, oh, you're a 50-year-old, whatever, you're a 40-year-old, 30-year-old, whatever. This is like, I don't know what else I would do. You know what I mean? Like, this is my life. Like, I don't know what else I would do. Like, sometimes, you ask yourself in those quiet moments, like, what would I do if I wasn't doing this? And the answer is nothing. Like, this is what I want to do. So even if I wasn't being paid for it, I would still probably be doing it, because it's something that's inside of you. And like you said, Brand never went away. You've been working on it for 20 years. Black and White from even the 94, it never went away. I have books and books of drafts because I don't really write. I draw, so I lay stuff out. So I have a bunch of books. I should put it out at some point, just layout. So I think there's 2 completely different drafts that are completely drawn out in layout form of Black and White as alternate stories. So this new version that we just, put out is kind of a hybrid of the original 94 and all these ideas that I've had for the last 20, some odd years. So I know exactly what you're talking about, Antonio. It just doesn't go away. It's who you are. Yeah.
You know what else hasn't gone away? I wanted to show you this.
Uh-oh.
All right. This is trade paperback. Ultimate Spider-Man. I've got a couple of these. And this is, I guess, I don't know. Had you ever inked Mark Bagley before?
No. I remember that he won the tryout book. Because I remember when I was a kid, I bought the tryout book. I was like, I'm going to win. And I sent my stuff in and I didn't go anywhere. But he won. So I was like, yeah, you little so-and-so. And the funny thing about Mark and I's friendship is when we first started working on the book together, we would talk and both of us were like, this isn't going to last longer than 6 issues. and the reason we thought that is because John Byrne had just done that Spider-Man Year 1.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
And nobody really cared for it. And
yeah, it wasn't very good.
Byrne.
I love John Byrne, but I did not like that.
Yeah, well, not very many people did. And so we just figured it was too soon to reboot and that it just wouldn't work. And I think just the combination of the 3 talents, it was like lightning in a bottle. And people really responded to it. And that thing took off beyond anybody, even Marvel's wildest, dreams. It was amazing. Yeah.
Oh, people can say what they want about Brian Michael Bendis now, but back, everybody forgets, man, he had hit after hit back, like House of M and all this different. I mean, he was killing the game back there. The Daredevil stuff he wrote was good. He had like new Avengers and just. I mean, his name was popping up on so many books at the time. But I was going through this, and it was strange because I saw Dan Panosian's name is also listed as an inker in there. And now it looked like you guys kind of rotated on a couple of books, didn't you? Or
we're really close friends. And what happened? I mean, if you don't mind me sharing a little bit of a personal story,
please.
Is my parents died a month apart. And so that was a really bad time. And so I'm a crazy professional, and I hate to give up an issue in a run, even a page in a run, but sometimes it has to happen. And so in lieu of giving it to a total stranger, to try to keep it in the family, I asked if Dan could help out, and he stepped in. And so not that I was able to keep control, but I trusted him enough that he wasn't going to make a move for the book, or, you know what I mean? Like there's a side that's competitive as well. So you don't really want to, in those days anyways, you wanted to stay on a run. And as far as me professionally, I never wanted to give up a page. I felt like I was doing the best work possible with the deadline that was given, but I never wanted to give somebody the opportunity to show me up on my own book. You know what I mean?
I got you.
So you never want to let the competition in. So I trusted Dan. And so Dan came in, hit a home run. He was basically pinch hitting, came in, hit a home run, and then went back to, whatever he was doing. So I'm really, really thankful that he did. And then, we didn't miss a beat on the schedule. I had enough time to kind of get emotionally back on track, and then just stepped right back into it. So I think if it was anybody else that did the work, I wouldn't be that happy about it. But it was Dan, and it was him coming in as a friend to help out. Yeah. So that's why you see Dan's name.
Yeah, because I was like, I saw him, but my first time seeing Mark Bagley, the first time I'd ever saw his work was on New Warriors. It was New Warriors, and I think Al Milgram was it was
Al inked everything.
It was like Al that I actually liked Al's inks on Mark, but they went off to another inker. I can't remember who that inker was, but I thought Al did a great job, especially like that first issue or so of inking him. And then, like I said, they switched off, and then somehow I'd love to interview Mark because obviously he ended up on Amazing Spider-Man, and there was and then so when he was I guess he was off of, and then he came back and he was on I think, didn't he actually go to DC and do Superman or something? I thought he did something.
He came to DC, and I worked with him again.
Yeah, I was like, y'all were doing Trinity, right?
Yeah, we did Trinity together. That was a weekly book, man. You talk about dedication. We didn't miss a page. We did 52 issues. We did a book a week.
How did you do that?
I don't know.
That's unheard of now, because it's like when Ethan talks about being on that X-Men run with Grant Morrison, and he was brought in just to be the fill-in guy, and then he couldn't even he only did like 4 issues of it, I think he said. So and then they had to get another. It was him, and I was just like Frank Quietly, and I was just like, man, I could even. You must be pretty fat. How long is it, like when you get a page? How long does it take you to actually sit? Because I've seen you on a couple of streams, and you're working
on the streams. Yeah, yeah. But as far as speed, it usually is just dictated by the workload, because I'm not going to automatically, kill myself every day if there's no reason to, So if the way I always did the math was, if I had 2 books to do a month, I would do 2 pages a day. So if I had 3 books, I would do 3 pages a day. And so if it's a perfect schedule, and there's no fires, or there's no craziness that's going on with the schedule. It usually works out. And when I was able to do that is when the comics industry was a little bit more professional, dare I say, as far as getting things done and having books in the can or in the drawer, as they used to say. So a lot of the books in the early days, we were always 3 books ahead. So the premier spot was always to have 3 books in the can or in the drawer before that one, was on the newsstand. So there was always a buffer there. So there was always 30 days to get a book done. And so you could jumble multiple projects that way based on that schedule. But what is happening more and more is that long runs aren't happening for talent unless you're like an upper tier guy, like you're Greg Capullo. So they don't pull him from a book. They keep him on the book. But even like Aaron Lopresti, when we did our detective, comics run, we did like 3 or 4 books in a row. And that was it. We could have kept the schedule. We could have kept going. There was no reason why we couldn't. But I believe that what they want to do is this is where I'll put my conspiracy hat on, is what I think these big companies want to do is they don't want superstars anymore. They have to deal with Greg Capullos and the Mark, or the Bendises and those types. So they give those guys, runs or whatever they want to do. But people that are still really, really talented, but that they can manipulate or control, they do. So they're not giving talent long runs anymore because it's really the only way that you can create a following. Because if you're there every month for people, then they can see you, they rely on you, they see your name over and over again. That's why VAT and stuff like that is because it's branding, it's over and over again. But if you do 2 books here, 3 books over here, 4 books for Marvel, come back to DC, do 2, it's practically impossible to get a following. I've had people like on Super Sons, because that was a longer run, people would go, "Where have you been?" They actually asked me, "Where have I been?" I was like, I've been here for 35 years, but people don't know because you don't have a definitive run. And I remember recently Norm Rapman asked me, good friend, he lives up the street. He asked me, he said, "What's the key? What's the key to getting your name out there to get big, like superstar, like you were?" I go, "It's not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen because you need a long run and you need a definitive run." Because I'm known for several runs on books, Adventures of Superman, several different X titles, and Spider-Man. So those are big over decades, and then all the Image stuff. So there's definitive work that I've done, but it was long. It was like a year, 2, 3 years of a run, and they just don't do that anymore. So I believe that the companies, since the Image days, they don't want to create superstars. They want to kind of just create, like control talent, I guess. Yeah.
Interesting, man. That's great. One thing I've noticed, because like when you look, you definitely come up in the databases. I said you've inked so many. I mean, you've inked Spawn covers and all of that. You've inked Adam Kubert, another one of my favorites. Adam Kubert, David Finch, and I'm like, these are like generational talents. And obviously,
Yeah.
I was like, obviously, you've done the Wilson, Mark Silvestri, and there's like, I mean, is there anyone that you've wanted to ink that you haven't had an opportunity to ink before?
I wish it would have been under better circumstance, but I always wanted to ink George Perez, and I did ink George Perez in a. It was.
I was trying to get him to come on.
Yeah. Oh, he'll come on. He's a great guy. It was an Avengers Ultra Force. It was one of those Malibu characters.
Yeah, that's another thing. Steve Englehart talked about the Malibu,
and the cool thing is George drew black and white, and there's like a big like Ultra Force, like some kind of timeline merge or something like that. And so black and white are in this big double page jam. So George put black and white in there. And so the other one, there's 2 other people. I tried really hard to work with John Byrne, and I still feel like where I'm at right now, that I could bring something to his work. Especially back then, I felt like a kinship. I really felt like I could connect with him and bring it not to another level necessarily, but into a unique, like where he could look different, like almost like reinvent him and his look, the way Carl Kiesel did, or the way what's his name, Terry Austin did. In a way in that time. And then the other one, and it almost happened. There was a Silver Surfer job that I was in the running for with John Buscema. And so, oh my gosh, I'm almost getting willies right now. It would have
Conan stuff was incredible, man.
God. Yeah, it would have scared the shit out of me, right? Because I was already geared up. I was going to do it almost all brush, and I know John hates all inkers. Like even the best inkers that have inked him, he hates them all. And so I'm just going to be another one that he hates. Tom Palmer, I think, is one of the best guys that have inked him, and I think he's the only guy that John spoke not even highly, but just he spoke nice about. You know what I mean? Like he didn't put him up on a platform or anything, but he spoke decent about. So, and then he died. John passed away, RIP. So yeah, that didn't happen. And then there's one other, and it's not like it would be, it's just a personal thing, is what is his name? He has a run on the X-Men books, and I always forget his name. He's a guy that's done a lot of early X-Men work, and he's pretty obscure, but if I could remember his name, people would know. It'll come to me in the stream. But I saw his name on something recently, but he's the generation before me. And I believe Dan Green inked a lot of his early X-Men stuff.
Oh wow!
Gosh, I know you're an X-Men data bank.
Oh God! I was like, oh God! I was like, now my wheels are turning. Maybe the chat, do your job.
Yeah. Help an old man.
Paul Smith, was it? No, Paul Smith.
It was in that time. It was in that timeline.
Not Dave Cockrum, no, and
no.
Which loves his.
Dave Cockrum would have been awesome.
yeah.
Wow, that would have been a blast.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to take a look at this because I think Chrono Mechanics actually looks really cool, and I want to hopefully. I notice sometimes I do this and the screen locks up, but hopefully this works.
Everybody hope. Screen not lock. No locking for the screen.
Okay. I was like, I always hate when I do that, but I wanted to show the book. And aha, here we are.
Yes, we have it.
Now with colors by Narwhal.
Yes.
How did that come about? How did you talk Narwhal into doing this with you?
I didn't have to talk him into doing it. He kind of was already, all I had to do is say a new project, and he was like, yeah. So he came on my YouTube channel. We did a hacks chat together. And so I really liked his book. I liked what he was doing. And so there was a kindred spirit. And I knew that Chrono was always on the back burner. So I had black and white, but then I had Chrono on the back burner. And so I had already had some pages developed, and I already had the plot written. So I just started sending him pages, and it just clicked. Like he did a sample, and it just clicked. So he was kind of like how it fast tracked as well. So I kept sending him pages, and then he would bring them back and inspire me to go, further and faster. And so then I did the cover. I had my friend Sean Ellery do the colors on that. And so then we just decided to put it out. But yeah, I'm really lucky to get that guy.
Now here is where, that's one thing I meant to ask you, because I've noticed on like as you went on later down the road, you changed your signature on the art. You, instead of going AT, you're actually writing out Thibert on there. So what made you do that? Why did you change it? Because I always loved that AT back in the day.
That's a good question. Matt Banning, his bat, if you look at the A and the T in bat, it's my AT. So he just kind of did my AT, and then he put a B and another T at the end. And once I saw that, I was like, I can't keep that going. So I rebranded, and kind of the new Thibert is inspired a little bit by the Frank Frazetta logo, or the way he signs, and the way like the Walt Disney kind of bloopy kind of open, fun stuff. So it's a little bit Frazetta, a little bit Walt Disney. The signature was inspired by, yeah.
Interesting, because this is more of a, this looks like it could be a cartoon series or something. It's always interesting to me, because I've seen, so your work is you've inked a lot of just straight traditional superhero type stuff, and this obviously has more of a cartoony feel. So I'm assuming you could pretty much draw anything then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I worked as an illustrator. I've painted. I can draw realistic, and then I can do the superheroic, like mainstream Marvel, DC, in various styles, as you've been able to see over the years. But there's one thing that's always been there, because when I was really young, I wanted to be a Disney animator. So I just thought that would be amazing. But then as you get older, you realize it's kind of an assembly line process. Not that comics can't be, but comics, you have a little bit more control over the beginning, middle, end of whatever you're doing. Like if you're inking a page, you get to start it and finish it. There's not really anybody else that jumps on it and things like that. So, I was kind of turned off by the assembly line studio, workplace. So then I just started getting into illustration. And then, like I said, I came back into comics kind of inadvertently, like I wasn't really pursuing it. And so I think I'm just a fan of style in general. So I believe one of the reasons I have a 35-year career is because I never really adopted to one style. I just kind of kept reinventing myself over the years, just to keep it fresh and original and interesting for myself. So I started getting back into cartooning, and I think it helped my superhero mainstream work too, because most of my training is all very realistic, life drawing, things like that. So it really helped me get back into a shorthand way of drawing, gestural stuff, and just more bombastic storytelling, versus like the rigid realism. And so I think it just came out of, wanting to express yourself in different ways as a creative person.
Well, Art, let me tell you something, man. This is beautiful work here, brother. I got to tip the cap to you, man. I loved it. I remember when I first started seeing these images a few months ago, I was like, wow, man, this is great. I just love this art. Man, this looks beautiful, man. I was like, it's like you obviously had some success with relaunching Black and White, and I'm assuming you'll do more of those stories.
Yeah, there's a volume 2 that I have a script for, and I'm breaking down the artwork now. So that's going to follow this. And then I have another Chrono Mechanics story that I have in really loose breakdown form. So I am writing things down more now than I was in the past, because, laying it and drawing it all out takes a little bit of time. So I'm working a lot more with my wife, so I can just kind of do notes, and we can have a little story meeting, and then she can type them up into a quick kind of treatment, and then we can see how the story works. And then I can break them down into beats, that I can draw from. So that's the way we're working now, because I do want to stay in this Comicsgate create your own arena for as long as I can. Mm-hmm. So I hope that all these books are supported in a way that makes financial success for me and my family, because right now this is where my heart's at, and I really don't want to go back to Marvel and DC. Not that I have a problem with them, but I'm just having the time of my life.
Being your own boss. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is great. I'm a big fan of Sean Galloway, and I see you got him you tricked him into doing a variant cover for you?
I've known Sean before he broke into the business. So it was when I was launching, it was Quantum Mechanics at the time. So I met him at a con, and he was just hanging out there, and we got to talking, and he fell in love with the concept. So years later, we stayed friends, and he said he would do me a piece. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, you got Tom Bancroft.
Tom Bancroft he was in the Disney Renaissance time, and he worked on Mulan is his big claim to fame, and he did the Eddie Murphy character Mushu.
Mushu.
Yeah, so he was the lead animator on that. And he also designed the character, and his twin brother Tony directed that movie.
Did you see the live action trailer to that? Because they did not have a Mushu case. Some people were disappointed that there's not a Mushu case. Now they may be holding him out of the trailer if he is there, but at least right now, the trailer that they showed for the live action Mulan looked like they're trying to be a little bit more serious with it, I guess.
Yeah,
and not
that's what it looks like. Which I don't know. The trailer looked pretty good.
Yeah, it did actually.
Yeah, I will miss Mushu because I think he was definitely the reason the cartoon, the animated version, worked so well. I remember reading a review in the LA Times when that movie came out, and the reviewer said, in spite or despite, however you use that word, of the Disney formula, it still worked, and it was above and beyond, using that same Disney formula with the cute sidekick and then the musical aspects and stuff like that. So I always thought that was pretty insightful because, they were starting to get hit and miss as far as the Disney formula. And so they, at that time, shortly after Mulan, they had to start reinventing themselves.
And I was like, yeah, well, see, there's the thing, because they started, and that's when I've noticed they started kind of doing more of the 3D animation. And I see someone in the chat goes, how about that Jeff Smith Netflix Bone series, which he had kind of, when we were off the air, he had mentioned that he wouldn't tell me exactly. He said, I was like, hey man, this would be a great cartoon. I was like, I always thought Bone should be a cartoon. And he was like, don't be surprised if you hear about some of these. I can't really go into detail, but something's in the works. And so he had told me that, it was such a thrill to talk to Jeff Smith. I'm just such a huge fan of his. And he mentioned, that there might be something in the works, but he didn't elaborate on it. And then obviously a few days ago, they announced that the Netflix deal had been done and that it will be, instead of 3D animation, it's going to be 2D, which that was something he and I talked about. Not to disrespect anyone that likes 3D animation, but because there's some great 3D animation films. I love 3D animation, but I'm a big fan of 2D animation. So
the thing is, I don't really discriminate between the two. And just like with traditional inks, or digital, whatever, and all that, as long as it's cool, you know what I mean? As long as the style fits the story you're trying to tell, I'm all about it. So I always think it's weird when, like say Disney on high, they say, oh, 2D movies don't sell anymore. It's like Lilo and Stitch did very well. It was 2D. I just think that you have to find the right story and you have to get the right people involved, whether it's a 2D or 3D. I don't think people discriminate that way. I don't think somebody's like, you know what, I'd like to go see that, movie, but it would be, much better if it was 2D, or it would be much better if it was 3D. I don't think people think that way. I think they just, if it's interesting and it's a good story, they'll go see it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that, I don't know. I'm just a big fan of I don't know the way traditional animation works, but sometimes it almost looks like you got the cheat code going when you use the computer software. Although even movies like Aladdin or Lion King or Mulan, they all used 3D software in some of those big fight scenes and stuff, or like the hyena, or when they had that big herd,
the stampede,
they had a big stampede going. They had to use rendering software because it'd be just too much work to draw all that by hand.
And a lot of that makes sense. Or if you have a mechanized character or a machine or a car, those things make absolute sense to use a 3D program, because those things are drag to draw, hand drawn, and also they don't look as good. So there are aspects to 3D and digital that is superior for certain things. So I would like to see them getting more back to hybrid stuff. Like Iron Giant, I thought was like they actually played down the 3D aspects as far as like the quality, I guess. So it looked more like traditional 2D, but yet that would have been crazy to hand animate. All those machine pieces and stuff like that. That stuff is really hard because it's not very forgiving. Like organic forms are a lot more, you can do the squashing and stretching and things like that when you animate them. But, the 3D stuff isn't as forgiving. They've kind of perfected its sense, but I think for a robot, it makes a lot of sense to keep it into that digital arena.
Right. So I'm looking at all your reward perks here. Man, you got with all the different variant covers and everything. Although I did slide down here, I got a bone to pick with you, Art.
Uh-oh.
All right. So you got the variant cover collection, and you've got all the variants, but if you buy this, you don't get your main cover, or am I wrong about that?
You're right, but if you go down to the ultimate tier will have all 6 of the books. So it'll have the main book, it'll have the sketchbook, and it will have the 4 variants.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, yeah, I want a big tier that's got everything in it. Yeah, I was like,
and the ultimate tier is doing very, very well. As well as I do, when you put the higher tiers in there, you don't really expect them to sell very well because you're asking a lot for people. It's a lot of money, and it's doing very well. So I'm very happy about that. That and the artwork tiers.
I saw you. Well, it looked like you sold out when I went down there. You sold everything. Yeah, the sketchbook, and then the original. Oh, you sold the cover. Yeah. Oh wow. I've bought a cover or two here. I actually, matter of fact, I heard from Rob Willis earlier. I should hopefully be getting to see my Dark Santana variant that he is doing for Brand Way of the Gun. Hopefully sometime tonight. He told me he was going to be working on it this weekend, so I am very much looking forward to seeing what he comes up with, because I really, when we were kind of riffing on the ideas for the variant cover, me and him were going back and forth, and I had an idea of something I wanted him to do, and he kind of took it another direction. So I'm really excited. I'm excited to see what he comes up with. It's always interesting when someone else takes your characters and draws them and stuff. So but man, I thought all your variant covers looked really cool, man. These are great in the colors, and this is all Narwhal stuff here. He colored all this, or did you have someone else?
He did all the interior pages. So like I said, my buddy Sean Ellery did the cover. And so he's kind of the go-to Chrono guy. So he does all the high-profile Chrono Mechanics stuff, like the covers and all of our promotional stuff, and even the
Presti. I love that, man. It's like, love it. This is beautiful, man. This is beautiful work here. I was like, I think you're gonna do extremely well. I mean, looks like people are picking it up already, but man, it just you got all your variant covers are done by just like the upper echelon. This is great, man. You got some great tiers here, and I see. Thank you to the mods that have been sharing the Chrono Mechanics link in the chat, and it's obviously in the description as well. If you guys are wanting to check that book out and support Mr. Thibert, let me ask you this, because I know you've got black and white, and it's at the printers now. Is that not correct?
Yeah, I have the proof right here. So the proof is in the proof. So here's right. So everything's done like I showed you too. Here's the ash can. So we just got the ash can in. So all the printed, all the stretch goal stuff and all the printed material is done. The labels are all printed. We have the boxes everything's ready to go. All we're waiting for is the books to come from China, from the printer, and that's it. So once
Did you
that
use Print
happens,
Ninja?
I wish I would have. So we were talking to them early on, but it was taking a little bit longer to get quotes from them and to figure out how we were going to do things. And I had already done a lot of groundwork with this printer that I'm not going to mention right now. And so we went with them instead. And so since we've talked a lot with Jen over at Print Ninja, and we've got all the details ironed out. So as soon as Chrono is done, it's going right to Print Ninja. So we're going to use Print Ninja definitely for the next crowdfund book.
All right, that sounds great, man. But yeah, no, this Chrono Mechanics looks fantastic, Art. I just it really feels like you poured your heart out into these pages. I'm really, I don't know why, but sometimes I gravitate more towards the cartoony type stuff more than I do the more serious, like Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri type superhero stuff. So, I don't know if that makes sense, but because I'm a big Jim Lee fanboy, as anybody that knows me knows, like Jim Lee, I'd be like, oh, Mark Silvestri and all that, obviously I'd be geeking out either way, but I don't.
I love all that stuff though. See, like I don't subscribe to one thing. Like I like all of these things. And also for me, I love to ink, I love to draw, but I never ever thought of myself as, oh, you're an inker, or you're a penciler, or you're a writer, or, it's just like you're a creative person. I played music as well. So I just do creative stuff. That's just who I am. So the fun is, for me anyways, is just to find projects and to find things that interest you and that you can be creative doing them. And so the reason I like Chrono Mechanics so much is because it's not like anything that I've ever done before. So it is fairly unique in that aspect, as far as the storytelling, the layout, the character design, the ink design, and even Narwhal's color. I think it's a fairly unique style book. And I think this is the only place that I could bring it, because I believe the mainstream would shun a book like that. I don't think they would be that embracing to it. But this community that we've helped create over the last year or so, I believe will embrace a book like this, because you look at like Doug's books, those are cartoon books, Earthworm Jim and the Bigfoot Bill. And then even Monster MD, Von Klaus's book,
which I backed, and I'm looking forward to receiving it. But yeah, Monster MD looked great.
That book looks great, man.
Yeah.
So you have that, and then some of my favorite artists, like in the mainstream, are like Humberto Ramos and even Carlo Barbieri, and guys that draw in a more cartoony style. So I've never ever just like wanted to pigeonhole myself into one look or one direction. Maybe it's just because I get bored easily, so I want to go on to different aspects. And there's also different styles that I have in my sketchbooks, and that I've done pitches, like I've done animation pitches and things. So I've drawn in other different, other styles as well. So I just like to stay interested and just keep reinventing myself. And I do believe that's why I still have a valid career or a relevant career, is because sometimes you can get locked into a decade. You can get locked into a style, and then once that style is gone, then what do you do? And so one of the things, this is just a small little industry story. I remember Jim Lee and I, when we first broke into the industry, we were like sitting right next to each other at San Diego Comic-Con when it was at the old like small civic center. And we just hung out. And then, at night you go party, and you party usually with whoever you're hanging out with in the daytime. So we went out, and I'm not going to name this guy, but he was like a big time artist that we came up reading his work and stuff like that. And he was kind of sitting on the curb outside of this party. It didn't even look like he was invited to the party. Like he was just waiting for somebody to bring him into the party. And we both looked at each other, and for the rest of the night, we were saying, we're not going to be that guy. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to age out of the industry. We're going to stay relevant. We're going to keep reinventing ourselves. We're going to keep fresh and interesting. And I believe, Jim obviously has, and I'm trying, to do the same as well. But it's one of those things when I think it was pretty insightful for us, when we were breaking in, to have that kind of, it was almost like a gift. It was bad for him, but it was like a gift to us, because we were like, no, we got to stay relevant. We got to stay hungry, and we have to keep working our butts off, because you're only as good as your last job. And if your last job stunk, then guess what? All those years you did prior, it isn't going to matter. So people can judge you on what you're putting out at this moment in time. And so I know he's always adopted, that philosophy, and I have as well. So always be the best, man. Always be the best.
Jim's one of my favorite, but like Todd McFarlane, I'd love to talk to Todd. I would love to talk to Todd, but like those are guys, pretty much a majority of the original 7 Image founders. I would definitely like to, Silvestri, Liefeld. I would love to talk to Wills. I would love to talk to Todd. It's like Eric Larson. I used to read his stuff on, Spider-Man when he took over after Todd. And I was like, oh God, man, it would be interesting conversation. So I'm always looking for that when I invite people such as yourself to come on to these streams and just kind of pick your brains. Art, I've enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate the time, and man, Chrono Mechanics looks fantastic. I really cannot say that enough. This book looks incredible, man. I just congratulations to you, man. This book looks incredible, and I really wish you the utmost success with it, sir.
Thank you. You're way too kind, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to come out and pitch Chrono Mechanics. So if you haven't checked it out, I believe Antonio said there's a link in the chat.
Oh yeah.
Or I mean in the description, and
it's in the chat too. The mods have been dropping it in there, and I appreciate that. So.
Yeah. So if you could just bop over there after we're done here and check it out, and if there's something you like, please support the book. Thanks again, Antonio.
Well, tell people, like, you're on social media, you're on the interwebs. How can they reach out to you if they want to? If they want to follow you on the Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, none of us like the Twitter, but we realize it's kind of the necessary evil, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, if you type in my name, I believe all the different platforms show up. So I'm on Twitter, Art Thibert. I'm on Instagram, Art Thibert. Facebook, Art Thibert. And I believe YouTube is Art Thibert Inks or something like that. But I think it will show up as well if you just type in my name. So yeah, I do YouTubes. I'm trying to do them more frequently. So tomorrow we are going to go with a hacks chat with Render Contender. So we're going to talk some more Chrono Mechanics stuff and just comics industry stuff. He's got some really interesting insight. If you guys don't know who he is, he did one of the supplemental stories for Graveyard
Shift. Yeah.
Yeah.
Volume 2.
Yeah, he's really, really talented. And he actually has a history at Hack Shack Studios. He broke into the comics industry over 20 years ago, working at the studio here.
So he's not a kid?
No.
Oh my God. So he's like, oh my God. Hilarious. Okay, so yeah. I don't know why it's weird. Sometimes when people contact you on Twitter, you're thinking they're 24 years old and stuff. And then it was one guy, me and him kind of had a little brow on the interwebs, and found out the guy's 50 years old. And I was like, so it just throws me off. I was like, okay, I don't know why I thought. I was like, when these a lot of these creators now that I'm seeing coming up there, like the Diaz brothers on Magic Cop, they're younger, they're not, I'm old and washed up. I'm like, it's that's funny to me. You going 20 years. I was like, well, so he's my age, for God's sakes.
Let me think. Yeah, it's been at least 20 years. But you know what? To be honest, he was really young. I think he was just out of high school. So he was really young. So he's probably not as old as you're thinking, but he's not young either.
Well, the reason I say that is like I've looked at, before Kanan was able to commit to Brand, I had brought in Shelby Robertson, who had worked with Rob Liefeld. Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's been in the business like 26, 27 years.
Yep.
But I've got like 5 years on him, I think. But Rob hired him when he was like 17 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So he's got a quarter century in the business, but I've still got a few years on him.
Pushing 40, but he's in his 30s, so by my standards and maybe by yours, they're still young, Because you said you're 40s, right? Your early 40s?
Yeah. Well, I'll be in right at the beginning of March. I'll be 45. So
yeah. So you're still
I love this from Comics Legend. He called him Elder Contender. I was like, I don't know why I thought he was an older guy, a younger guy. That's hilarious to me. Yeah, okay. Because he sent me a DM the other day. I'd had I guess a project he had worked on. Someone came on and promoted on the channel, and he said, "Hey man, thank you for allowing him to come on and promote the book." Because I guess maybe sometimes he's a little gun shy about getting on these streams and stuff. So he was thankful that I let the other guy come on and promote the book. So I was like, it would have been nice. I always like having the artist on, or if I can get both the artist and the writer on, I always like having that. So that's always a plus. But yeah, it just seemed like he was a little camera shy. But it was nice of him. He sent me a nice little note.
He doesn't even get on the camera when he comes here, so we just kind of go visual silence, right? So I think I just use my icon and we just talk back and forth. He's a mystery man. He's an international man of mystery.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby.
All right. Well, oh man, this has been great. Art, again, thank you so much for doing this. This is man, I'm looking forward to reading Chrono Mechanics. I think this is a cool looking book, man. I'm gonna check out your project there, man. And
well, thank you so much for your generosity, sharing your channel here and everything. So if there's anything I can do for you, Antonio, let me know too.
Yeah, well, don't say that loosely, man. I might take you up on that, brother. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I need stuff, man. I'm always needing stuff,
Yeah, well, you know what? We're not going anywhere. So at some point the paths will cross, because I know we were talking about, and I feel bad that cover didn't work out, but we'll do something.
Well, yeah, we can, because obviously it would be nice to have some T-Bear hanging on that sounds strange saying that. Have you in my vast collection here as I look around my room and see all these original.
Well, if you don't mind me saying where the piece was hanging that you told me in the boudoir.
Yes.
I was like, I don't know if that's going to be, how that really how people would feel about that, But, it gives you something to look at while you're, in the library.
And before I sign off, I had a couple people, they were guessing different artists when we were talking about the artists that you hadn't inked. I have to ask, because this name came up a couple times. It's not Barry Windsor Smith, was it?
No, but that guy's up on my that would be intimidating. Boy, would that be intimidating. John Floyd, who's a friend of mine, got to ink him over at what the heck was that company called that Bob Layton was editor-in-chief of, and Jim Shooter. Man, I'm blanking.
Valiant? No,
it was Valiant. Yeah,
okay,
Valiant. So
you said Jim Shooter, I was like Valiant.
John Floyd got to ink him. He did a really, really good job with all those kind of thins and thicks and the bloops and stuff. Man, now I'm thinking again who this artist is. I thought I'd be able to come up with him, but I didn't.
Yeah, so I was like, as soon as we go off the air, you can be like, I know who it was.
I know who it was. If I think about it, I'll go into the description or into the notes in the thing, and I'll put a caption in there.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Art, this has been a pleasure, my friend. I really think Chrono Mechanics, like I said, it looks unique. It is, and this is a great book to have in Comicsgate, man. This is awesome. So I was like, I'm sure you have 20 other ideas.
Yes.
Yeah, 20 other ideas of intellectual properties that you can develop and showcase here through all these wonderful comic fans that purchase our wares.
Yes, yes, I do. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. So thanks to all for the support. Yeah, I appreciate it. And the links. So everybody that's mods and that's been putting the Chrono Mechanics links into the chat, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. It is awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up. But if you want to reach out to me, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and right here on this YouTube channel everywhere is at Akari Press. And if you type in akaripress.com, it will take you directly to my Indiegogo campaign for my comic book series brand with the phenomenal Kanan White. We're on Teespring. We're on Amazon.com. The links to those are in the description. My thanks to the great Art Thibert. Back Chrono Mechanics, guys. I'm out.
Thanks, guys.